person. I did too. I thought that was some good points. The record reflect it is September 6, 2022, and the time is 3 p.m. Our first order of business is the approval of the agenda. We have a couple changes that we'd like to make. We'd like to strike under the consent agenda. Item B will remove the DSS reimbursement revenue appropriation. And also, we will remove under closed session item B, and we'll strike that from the record. Are there any other changes?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the agenda as amended.
Motion on the floor by Mrs. Tucker. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have our invocation and pledge of allegiance, and I ask Ms. Claudia Tucker to lead us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll bow our heads. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you today in the state of democracy. We ask that you give us guidance, wisdom, compassion for all those before us here, and for all of our constituents. Help us to make decisions that look at Amherst County as long-term, not short-term. Dear Lord, please, please, please protect our public safety folks, our teachers, our sheriff's department, and all of those that work to make the lives here of our citizens much better. Thank you so much for the rain. Thank you for the sunshine. Just like in life, we need both. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Tucker. Appreciate it. All right. Our next order of business would be the citizen comments. Is there anyone wishing to speak under citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close citizen comments, and we'll move on to the consent agenda. Board, are there any questions regarding the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the removal of item B.
Motion on the floor by Mrs. Tucker. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. All right, next we have old business. We have item A, public safety volunteerism. Mr. Rogers, would you like to start off for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. At various past meetings, we have been discussing the need for increasing the number of personnel available to serve as volunteer firefighters and as EMS career staff. One of the ideas was that we make it possible for our career staff to volunteer with fire companies and for members of fire companies to volunteer, because many of them all carry the same certifications. And so the problem is federal employment law. The Fair Labor Standards Act makes that challenging because it makes us subject to payment of wages. So when a volunteer is working in a similar type of work that they're being paid for, they can't really volunteer without also being paid. So we asked the county attorney to do the research and come up with some tools that would make it possible for us to allow people to volunteer in both areas. And they came up with a form which is attached in your board package. And so this form exists to limit our risk. And so it simply puts the employee on notice that they are volunteering and they shouldn't be expected to be paid. But the county attorney is prepared to address the risks that we still assume in this area. So if I may turn it over to Mr. Lockaby, let him share what risks we still face. And the question before the board is whether or not you want to assume those risks in order to increase the pool of people available to serve on EMS crews.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. The basic issue here is that you need to, a person cannot volunteer to do the same job that they are paid to do. So, hello, all right. A person who is non-exempt, which is to say that they're paid hourly, cannot volunteer to do the same job that they're paid to do. They need to be paid for time and a half for hours that they do doing the same job that are over and above. And you can't waive that. That's just a rule. It is what it is. Now, the question that comes up in this particular situation is whether or not volunteering with a volunteer fire company would be permissible to somebody who is working as a career member of a rescue squad, whether that puts us in any jeopardy, not rescue squad, but as a career part of the fire EMS service on the EMS side. And it raises a question which there is not a clear answer under federal law at the moment. So right now, it's pretty clear that if a person who is working as an EMS, they cannot then volunteer for a rescue squad, and probably can't volunteer for a rescue squad and have it be considered to be okay. However, if they are patching people up in ambulances as a county career person, and then they are pulling hoses out to fight fires as a volunteer person, you've created a definite separation between the two jobs, which I believe is defensible. However, I do want you to be aware that there is some risk there. You may decide that that is an acceptable business risk that you want to take in order to make sure that we encourage and foster volunteerism and make sure that we have the people who really care be able to volunteer to do what they want to do. So we've tried to put in place a form such that people at least are giving an informed consent such that they understand what the parameters of what they're doing are. There are ways that we can further limit our risk, such as limiting the number of volunteer hours that somebody can do. There are certain people who are, as you well know, there are certain people who are extremely gung-ho about doing fire EMS volunteerism. They love being paid for it. They love not being paid for it. They would do it 168 hours a week if they could. We all know people like that, but we still might decide that we want to have a limitation on the number of hours that somebody can volunteer who is also a career employee, which could limit our exposure in the event that there were an adverse decision in a future court proceeding. Like I said, I think that we would have a strong argument that these are different positions, different job responsibilities, and that therefore the issue doesn't arise here, but I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that the risk exists.
Thank you, Mr. Lockaby. Thank you, Mr. Lockaby, appreciate it. I know this is something that we've talked about as a board for quite some time, and it's finally here upon us at this table. I have no problem with it. I think it's great. I think it's a way to get some of the individuals that want to volunteer in our county to be able to do that. Plus, they have all the experience that you could want, and they're willing to do this, just to be part of the county to help give back. I know that I received an email from an individual from one of the volunteer organizations, and I tend to agree with what they said. That they wanted to make sure that no paid staff who volunteer should be allowed to hold the position of captain or chief officer rank because of the conflicts of interest that could take place. And I agree with that. I think if we hadn't dealt with that, we should. And moving forward, I would like to see this go into effect. Anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Martin?
I fully agree with what Mr. Lockaby stated. To me, it's always been a risk versus reward. I think the case law that you forwarded to us and I've read in other places gives us fairly solid ground. Obviously, anybody can bring a case, but in risk versus reward, I think the reward outweighs the risk. And I'm in agreement with limiting holding the position of an office in the volunteer department.
Ms. Tucker, Mrs. Tucker.
Mr. Chairman, from a operational standpoint, and I'll direct my question to Mr. Martin, if you've got the volunteers, and I have supported this for years, I couldn't understand why we couldn't do it, but it looks like we're getting closer now. If they're in the if they're paid EMT, but they want to run fire calls, then they also have to have gone through all the training to run fire calls. Or is that, so you just kind of have to be dually trained, is that right?
They're already duly trained. I think the difference
Then you
is
answered my question. All of them are already?
their primary job duties are different.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I guess under the recommended motion, it says something about, proceed with allowing county EMS staff to volunteer for volunteer fire and EMS companies operating in Amherst County. Would we?
I would strike EMS companies.
Yeah, I'd like to, that's what I was gonna say, according to what Mr. Lockaby said. And also, if we could, make sure that, no, paid staff will be able to hold the positions of officers in the company. So,
That's your motion?
that is my motion.
Very good.
So there's a motion on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Lockaby and Mr. Rogers. Next, we have the ANAC feasibility study regarding the property on 29 North, a potential ag center. Mr. Rogers?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The Architectural Partners was hired by Nelson County to do a feasibility study of the proposed site for the Amherst-Nelson Agricultural Complex. It's a 300-acre site, and there were several questions to be looked at. The Architectural Partners concludes that the site is suitable for what has been proposed for it, and they did not answer all of the questions. In particular, they can't tell us how much water is there, but that there is water there. And so the question before the board at this point is, should we continue to proceed with this, or should we stop moving forward? So the next step would be, if you want to continue to move forward, would be to hold a joint meeting with the Nelson County Supervisors and determine whether they're interested in proceeding with the purchase of this property, if that makes sense. So, do we buy or not? That's the question, and we would need to know whether they want to partner with us or not.
Mr. Chairman, I know that you've had a lot of conversations with the Nelson County Administrator, and part of that was encouraging them to get the vendor to give us the answer that we sought in the beginning. How have those conversations come along?
They failed. I insisted that they go back to the contractor, Architectural Partners, and tell them, you know, they got $60,000. The thing that we wanted the most for that, our $30,000 share, was a drawdown study on the existing wells. Those Architectural Partners came back to Nelson County Administrator and said, yeah, they'll do that for an additional $9,000. And I gave her some tips on how to hold the line. She did not. They've accepted this. The feasibility study is done, paid for. It is what it is. And now we need to decide what we want to do next.
Mr. Chairman, having been very involved in all of this from the beginning, I think at the very least, both boards need to sit down, look at each other, and hash this out.
Mr. Rogers, I think we should just put this off until our next meeting of the month when we have all 5 board members here to discuss this. I don't think anything's pressing at this point in time regarding the feasibility study. If we set it off another month and have this discussion the first thing of next month, I think would be fine with me. That would be my recommendation.
And I agree with you, Mr. Pugh, absolutely.
And in the meantime, when your discussions with the Nelson administrator, I mean, is there any type of push with that board? I haven't heard anything from that board, a peep from that board recently regarding this potential collaboration.
Nor have I. I'm not really allowed to speak with their board members. I have to work through their administrator.
Okay.
So then I presume the motion on the floor is to table till the next meeting?
That's what I'll make the
We've got
motion.
the other 2 members here. Because Mr. Ayers has worked just as closely on this as I have.
So, with that being said, unless there's any other discussion, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we table this until our next daytime meeting of next month. Motion on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. All right, item C, Mr. Rogers, strategies for goals and objectives.
Yes, sir. On the 15th of August, the Board of Supervisors met at Sweetbriar College and produced the goals and objectives for the county. We took our original 8 goals, reduced them to 4, and then added 19 objectives to achieve. The staff has now developed strategies on how to achieve each of those objectives, and those are in your board packet. And so we're looking for your approval, your adoption, your modifications, your changes. Anything you want to pull out will make our job a lot easier. 19 objectives with at least 2 strategies each is a lot to try to accomplish in a year. So, but anyway, I just wanted you to see, we took your work and did our own, and now need your guidance on what you want actually accomplished. Again, there's nothing pressing on this at the moment, other than the year progresses on. You may want the other board members here. You might want more time to study this. I just wanted to get this to you at the next available meeting so that we are moving forward and not simply waiting.
All right, Board, I would suggest we just take a look at this. I mean, it's a quite a substantial document to look through and to figure out what you want to cut and what we might want to reduce in scope. I have no problem sliding this off for another month or 2 and letting everyone look at it and see what we can cut out of this and kind of refine.
I've read the document. The only question I have is we've heard several times about an EMS academy, and I'd like to know more about what's involved in that. You know, the rumor mill is that it'd be an EMS and fire academy, but there's been no conversations with the volunteer chiefs about that, and that could severely affect how we train our volunteers. If the resources are moved towards that, if it's held during the day, it would negatively affect our volunteerism. So I'd like to know more about that before we proceed doing a regional fire academy.
I plan to address that topic directly in the county administrator's report. So when we get there, we can talk about that, where we stand.
Okay.
I'm fine with it. It's, a lot of work was put into this, and I appreciate the county administrator and the staff. It's a lot of work.
All right.
So, and just so you know, we will move forward on all these strategies, and any of them for which we need funding, you'll see the request for those in whether it's supplemental or capital budgets or O&M budgets. So these are, if these are the things that you are telling us you want us to do, and we will do that. If it requires funding, we will come and ask you for the funding.
All right.
Just so that, long as that's understood.
Yeah, we might need to discuss this. There's some items on here that we may want to pull, or of course, that's what the budget process is for as well, is looking at what we think we need in that given year and then whittling it down to what we do think we need. So, all right, appreciate it, Mr. Rogers. We will look at that again in the future and decide on that. Next, we have new business, Mr. Robert Brown, VDOT discontinuation of maintenance on routes, 747 Laison Sun Circle. Welcome, Mr. Brown. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are y'all doing?
Doing well.
Hey. Basically, I know a lot of people don't know this, but the reason this has been brought before the board to discontinue a short section of Rising Sun, as you know, Rising Sun Missionary Church is down that road, and a few years ago they did a major improvement to that parking area. Looks great, serves them well, but basically the parking lot incorporated a section of the state-maintained road. And rather than trying to bring that parking lot into our commercial entrance standards, it seemed like to make I don't want to say a mistake, but to fix the problem would be to discontinue a short section of Rising Sun Road that was within the secondary maintenance system. There was one property owner at the end of that road that had rights to enter his property. That property owner has been contacted and he has no issues. I don't know if you have a letter to that effect, but it was something to that effect that was put in place so you would know that he had no issues with it, and that would have been Mr. Cudd. I think that's Mr. Cudd. I spoke to him personally, and he had no issues with it. This is, like I said, it's to help fix something that was unintentional. I don't think it was anything intentional about it, just something that didn't nobody realize until it was done. So that is why we're bringing this to the board and asking for your approval. And it is a discontinuance. It's not an abandonment of right-of-way. Basically, all it is VDOT is discontinuing maintenance of that section of roadway that goes through their parking lot. We retain the original 30-foot prescriptive easement so that should that property be sold in the future, that they still have that legal ingress and egress to the property behind the church. That's why this is a discontinuance. I'll be glad to answer any questions that anybody has.
Any questions?
So Mr. Cudd still has access from us?
Yes, sir. He has a gate. He has a fence that comes up to the point behind the parking lot, and he has a gate. He does not use that access very seldom, but it is a access point that should be retained.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the board adopt resolution 2022-0011-R as presented.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And-
Mr. Pugh, while we've got Mr. Brown here,
Yes.
I got a point of personal privilege. You probably know what I'm
All
going to
right,
say.
no problem.
I had talked to Mr. Rogers about possibly reducing the speed limit on Warwick Barn Road. This
Yes.
process you got to go through with that.
Yes,
But we've got a lot of folks who are very, very concerned. As of this morning, I am even more concerned because I got run in the ditch. So I hope that we can see our way through to start
well,
collecting whatever data we need to do.
I've shared that information to our traffic engineers. They are in the process of studying it. I hope that maybe a portion of it can be reduced. I don't feel very optimistic, Ms. Tucker, that it's going to be the whole road is going to be, but maybe some of the most critical parts can maybe be reduced to 45. But I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with anything that you mentioned in your email, but I'm not optimistic based on how our traffic engineers review reducing speed limits, so.
We'll start the process, and then we'll keep on arguing with them if we need to.
That'll be fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Okay. All right.
All right, next we got building permits and inspections. The topic will be the permit fee increases We're being asked to consider fee changes for the Amherst County Building and Safety Inspection Division. Welcome.
Good afternoon. We have brought for your discussion several fee changes to our schedule. Most of these are reductions in fees. We have been requested to reevaluate how we charge for some of these permits, and we have surveyed our surrounding counties and have made a few recommendations for some minor changes.
So, yeah, I was getting ready to ask you that, but I see you did go around and survey the other localities to try to be in line with what they are charging or what they are doing? Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct?
At least to understand what they're charging and how they're charging it. Yes.
All right. Do you all have any questions at this point? All right. Well, I don't have a problem with this. I know this is your ball game. This is what you do every single day. You look at these things and come up with recommendations for us to look at. So I trust your judgment. And if there's no other discussion, I'll move that the board approve the proposed fee changes as presented. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. McBride, we have the SRO grants from the, I believe it's the state of Virginia is where the funding is coming from, correct?
Yes, Department of Criminal Justice. So the Sheriff's Department has received an additional grant. They currently have one SRO that is grant funded. They've received a grant for 6 more for the years of 2023 through 2026. The first year is funded 100% by the grant, and the latter years are reduced. Their funding is reduced. We do not know that percentage yet, what our match would be. The other piece of this is that it only covers their salaries and their benefits. So in order to completely outfit all 6 officers, we would need $78,000 per officer for a total of $468,000. That's one-time money, and then we'll roll in the motor vehicles into their operating budget. That is the nuts and bolts of it. What questions can I help you with?
I had a question when I was first reading this, and if it was in here, I didn't see it. And I support anything we can do to improve the safety of our schools.
Yes, ma'am.
But they operate during a calendar, during a school year. What are they doing the rest of the year?
I asked that question, and they only have about 4 to 5 weeks that is not school involved.
In all schools?
I believe so, but I can ask Captain Reynolds to come up.
Could you, Mr. Reynolds, could you please come up here? Just so everyone can hear you.
So YouTube can hear you.
Yeah.
What ends up happening is when the school's let out, you have summer school sessions where we have to have at least 2 SROs at each position. We also have an SRO conference that they go through to do threat assessment training, things like that. So once you even everything out, and we do supplements, some of this last year we didn't have a chance with COVID and everything else. The school, I think we looked at the calendar, it wasn't more than 5 weeks that the students got out total once they started summer school and everything else. So we still are going to use those staff as available. It's not like they could take the summer off. What the state has said is they will pay their salary for that entire period of time. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but basically, we're not going to let them sit around for that period of time. Our goal is, with the new staffing that we have, is not just to, I think we spend a lot of time and effort doing response to active shooter events. What we want to do and what we've started doing is doing digital threat assessment, working with the school system to identify. So if they identify a student that is possibly problematic, instead of letting that spiral to a point where a firearm is produced or some type of overt threat is made against the school, they'll actually do an assessment at the school, and that's where the SROs are involved in. So we have trained on active shooter events, but what we want to do is get our people to the point where we prevent it. We don't want to have 200 officers responding to an event here. What we prefer to do is be proactive and figure out ways to intercept it, and we're working with a lot of different
entities to get that done.
For follow-up question, so the SROs, I'm assuming that they work for the sheriff, is that accurate, or they work for the school board?
No, they work directly for the sheriff's office.
Okay.
We just have an MOU between the sheriff's office and the school system.
Okay.
So the 78,000 per resource officer, does that include the vehicle or not?
Yes, sir, it does. It includes everything for us to get them out the door and operational.
Okay.
Have we talked to the sheriff? Do we know how the sheriff feels about this?
Yes,
I would just, I mean, I'm sure that they've talked to you. How do you feel about this plan?
Oh, I think it's great to put a student, a SRO in every school. I just want to make sure the board's going to take care of us, when the grant runs out, I don't want to give a person a job for a year. And training's going to take that almost. It takes 6 months through the academy, then they have to go through field training. And then we're training probably more than we're on the street with all the requirements that ECGS is putting on us. And this would help us though, because you asked what we do in the summertime. Some of the training, these SROs come and fill the needs of the street that day, while these other guys are training, where sometimes we're down to 2 or 3 deputies on the street a day.
So these SROs that the Commonwealth of Virginia is funding, you're saying they could also be used as traffic officers?
When they're off duty, yes ma'am, they could do that when they're off. They're regular deputies when they're off duty, when they're working. But their primary function will be at the schools. They'll work school speed zones. They can go there and work in speed zones before school starts. They'll be there in the evenings when school's out, to make sure people slow down in school zones.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Martin?
So we don't know what the percentage may be next fiscal year in terms of the salaries?
No, the grant award says it does, they have not made that decision yet. When I was talking to Captain Reynolds, we haven't seen it be less than 40, where our match was more than 40%. And I wouldn't anticipate that the first year. After those 4 years, we don't know whether they would fund another grant round for additional years. That's when the county would pick up the whole price tag.
After 4 years?
After 4 years.
And then any raises, increase in
Benefit changes, all that
All
goes
that
in.
goes to the county.
Yeah.
So that's roughly 68,000 per employee with benefits. We're starting these
That's fine. At the starting pay, where we're at right now, I think, right? Is that what your starting pay is?
40s. We did it with sort of ones that have previous experience, because one of the things that the grant is dictating to us is they started saying that a mandatory experience had to be 3 years. Now they're ratcheting it down to 2 years.
Yeah, I spoke with the Department of Criminal Justice, the director, and I told him in a perfect world, they wanted somebody with 3 years there because of his experience. I said, but it's hard. People are not knocking the door down to be a police officer there. And it's going to be hard to get somebody with 3 years. I felt like somebody, a regular deputy, brand new to the school, would be better than nobody. And he agreed, and he said that they lowered it to 2, and if we could show cause where somebody had military experience or something like that for a while and became a police officer, they would probably waive it.
Okay.
Can I point out one other thing that I think is a little bit different? A lot of the people that recently have gotten out of law enforcement it's almost like, and I don't want to compare it to September 11th because that was a catastrophic event. But one of the things after what happened in Texas, you have a lot of police officers that are coming to us now saying, if you get these positions, I think we got 2 people the other day, that they're like, we don't want to be on the street dealing with all the political stuff and everything else, but there is a higher calling when we're talking about saving and taking care of our kids. And so I think a lot of the ones that are frustrated with the way the system was for a period of time, a lot of these people will come back in and do their duty, which I don't think there's any higher calling than keeping our kids safe, so.
And I know it's big money, but I'm just thinking, we in Bedford County, Bedford County's got 14 they got to deal with, the board's got to deal with 14 of them.
And I believe Bedford County recently, the board over there passed a
Yes,
resolution to
yes,
accept the grant. I'm sure other localities will follow. You know, I mean, it is a lot of money, but then you look back, if we said, you know, this is just too much money and something happens, then it's a very political,
I don't put a price tag on
Question.
kids' life.
you can, but I mean, it is, everything has a price tag regardless. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean,
I know.
but I'd hate to not accept the grant and, you know, you never know.
Well, that's why we put in for it. We were lucky we got it, so I'm real proud of that, but I know it's a hard pill for you guys to swallow.
I'm, like I said, I don't want to sway or anything else, but I think one of the things that I'm the proudest of is the relationship that we've established with the new school superintendent and having children in the schools. They are being proactive. I think Monelison is a different ballgame than it used to be. And that's what we want, and that's where we can plug these SROs in almost immediately, where they are actually in there furthering what they're doing instead of taking the SRO. Think about it this way, when you fight a fire and you think it's out, you always leave 2 or 3 there, so when it flares back up, you can put it back out. That's what we're doing right now with the SROs bouncing school to school. If we had a presence there, some of the disciplinary problems, they're going to be identified on the front end rather than the back end, and I feel like we're going to change the way we do business starting now moving forward.
How many do you have now?
4.
So, one at the high school, 2 at each middle school, and then one that just kind of fluctuates between the 6 elementary schools, right?
Yes, sir, 6 elementary schools. And so we have one at the alternative school as well. So we just have them floating back and forth. And like I said, I am really proud of what they've done. I mean, it was a tough year. I know it's been really tough for the school system with this, students coming back and getting everybody used to actually having some discipline. And I think this fits in really well with that. And I mean, you don't want an unfortunate event to trigger a response, but the fact is, like for us, like I said, I try to stress, we did do the active shooter training, but like your fire prevention programs that y'all do, Mr. Martin, are the ones that really are what make it. Because it's the fire you don't respond to that's important, and that's the same thing with us. If we can prevent these things, that's the key.
All right.
Any more questions, Dave?
No more questions from me? Any more questions?
No, thank you, Sheriff.
Any more questions from Ms. McBride?
What's the deadline to respond to this?
There's not really a deadline for that, but we do have a deadline for ordering the vehicles.
What's that?
A week.
A week from now?
Like, this is the whole supply chain nightmare we keep having. I was talking to them this morning, I was like, well, what if, no, we gotta order these, we have a week. I was like, okay, here we go again. Like, we had to go all the way to Kentucky to get some a year ago. I mean, that's the only place we could find a cruiser to replace one here.
The other thing on the deadline is it's within a certain period of time that you're approved, and we'd have to look at the exact dates.
Yeah, I didn't print that off, but it's not, I don't think it's on here.
Because I mean, like what happens is once we get it approved, we can start filling the positions, and it does, obviously with background checks and everything else. The first SRO that we get into the school, if you approve it today, it's probably 1st of October. In a perfect world, if everything flows.
60 days, so October 18th is the last day. To actually accept the grant, but we are into a problem with supply chain on the vehicles and stuff if we don't go ahead and get them orders placed. That's the real push.
All right. Well, thank y'all. Appreciate it.
All
I say it's good news that the grant came through, but I mean, I know you can't put a price on safety, and I mean, this will have a financial effect on the taxpayers of the county, just so they know, but I think it's a situation where you're better to be on the safe side than you are to not do nothing, so. Board, what's your pleasure? Is there a motion?
If I could get my computer up, I would.
It's on the screen.
All right, I'll make the motion. I move that the board authorize the county administrator to accept the DCJS SRO grant for FY 23-24, and to appropriate $468,000 for the equipment needed for the officers from the unobligated general fund balance, and plan to provide for the local match requirement into FY 24-26. There's a motion on the floor. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And Stacy, I guess one last thing is, as soon as you know what that that should be something you know pretty soon, shouldn't it? I mean, we're kind of accepting this, not knowing what the fiscal impact's gonna be going forward. And, it's not a good way to do business. So, all right. Let's see here. Okay, next we have, bus repair, Parks and Recreation, Mr. Randy Nixon.
Good afternoon. Let these guys get out.
All right, that's fine with me.
They got guns, so. Come to you, we've had some issues with our recreation bus. It's a 20-passenger bus. It's a 2006 model. They were on a trip back in July and had a tire blowout. Found out some things about them, learned something new every day as the new director. Of course, it sat for 2 years, basically through COVID. And I know that the seniors are really excited about getting back using it. We use it a lot with our senior citizens for their half-day and day trips each month. I think before COVID, they were going twice a month on trips. We've been going about once a month, I think since maybe April or May. And we were trying to get back to, doing more trips. And took it in to get it worked on, get some things done, and found some other things. We found out that the tires on it are very, very old, even though they only have 40,000 miles on the bus. My understanding is the tires are about 11 years old. So they're dry rotting and need to be replaced, and there's 6 of them. And that's about $1,200 for the tires. In that time, the air conditioning went out on it, the rear air conditioning went out, and the serpentine belt runs the whole system, and from what I understand, the serpentine belt basically melted to the air conditioning compressor. So they got to replace the serpentine belt, the air compressor, AC compressor, and then and that's like I think it's $2,200, and or $2,022. And then in the process of all this, if you walk down the aisle to get to your seat, there's a place where you feel like you're going to fall through the bus. There's been water leakage through the window seals, because it's an old bus, it's 2006 model, and the water has come over and damaged the floor, and the floor needs to be, the top layer of the floor needs to be pulled up to get the underside part of the floor and fix that, repair that. And that's approximately $8,500, and the total's almost $12,000. It's $11,722 what I've gotten in quotes to fix the bus, to make it roadworthy. Right now, it's sitting at Sonny Merriman's and cannot be driven, and that's why I'm here. I think it's important that we do. There's a lot of things I would like to see that bus do besides for the seniors. I see other trips, other things that we can do with that bus for our youth, not just our seniors. So I think it's an excellent tool that we have and resource that we have. The other thing I'm requesting is that, from my understanding, in the fiscal year 24 CIP schedule, it was to replace the bus. I'm asking to move that up to this fiscal year 23 budget, because they're telling me it's going to be 12 months to 18 months to replace the bus, to get a new bus for the state contract. So, and that's what I'm requesting today. And I guess whatever your pleasure might be. Right now, we're not doing any trips. We're having to cancel and hold off doing any trips for our folks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nixon. I don't know how I feel about the suggestion of moving it up for $108,750. I think it's important we get the bus repaired and do that at this point in time and get that back on the road. I would be fine with that. I'd still like to see us just maintain our CIP as opposed to spending $180,000 and drawing that money down at this point in time. We already had it scheduled for next year.
How many miles does that bus have on it, the one that's in disrepair?
Only 41,000. But the problem is, you know, I think they use it mainly for senior trips and stuff, twice a month. So they're going to Roanoke, they're going to Richmond, they're going, you know, half-day, day trips. And I see being used a whole lot more than that. That's my goal as the
You
director.
said 41,000?
41,000 is all it's got on it. Yes, ma'am.
We had a grant for an electric bus and we let it go, didn't we?
That's my understanding, and it only got 125 to 150 miles before we had to recharge it. Based on, I think, even just our day and half-day trips, it wasn't going to be a good fit, you know, for what we do. I could just see them folks being stuck out on the
Yeah.
highway with...
There's a lot of concern about the cost to replace batteries in some of these electric
Yes.
vehicles too.
Yes. Yes. I've heard they've been catching on fire, too. I don't know if y'all have heard that or not.
Mr. Martin, has the Parks and Rec Committee, have they weighed in on this at all?
They've been weighing in on it for the past several years. They've been asking for a new bus, and we've kind of been hunting it for a few years. So I'm not denying the need for the new bus. I'm kind of with Mr. Pugh. I think we're going to try and stick to the CIP schedule as much as possible, although our next item is probably the same thing. So if we waited till July, we're probably you're probably 2.5 years out from getting the bus.
That's part of the reason why I did it, and I don't know what the cost to be then. It could be even much more 2 years from now, you know. So, pay me now, pay me later, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a need for the bus. It's kind of like these fire apparatus, you know, they don't have many miles on them, but they go down, and when you need them, you need them. I mean, it's not the same as an apparatus, but I'd move that the board appropriate the funds to repair the 2006 recreation bus in the amount of $11,722, and appropriate funds for the purchase of a replacement bus in the amount of $108,750, drawing those funds from the unobligated general fund.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Nay. Motion carries 2-1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the Monelison fire engine purchase. Jared Scott, are you in here? Hello, welcome.
Thank you, Board. We're here today to ask, the Monelison Fire Department is looking in our fire apparatus replacement schedule. You know, you just replace the Amherst engine, and so they're looking at replacing the next one just in the replacement schedule will be the Monelison engine 22. So they've already started working on the specs for that and getting some quotes. The reason we're here today is, you know, this is a substantial investment for the county and a substantial amount of funds, but there's also a substantial amount of probably discount that could be made by ordering early. So you have the, I think the proposal, I mean, it's $942,000. If we ordered it now, we're asking the board to, you know, sign a contract before September 15th and trying to avoid inflation costs. It'll take 20 to 24 months for it to be built, so it should be here in 2 years. If we didn't, we're just trying to avoid, there's a potential after September 15th, there'll probably be a 6 to 8% inflation, and then another inflation cost like July of 23, which will put us at like $1.1 million projected, if that's. And that was pretty, when we talked to the different businesses for quotes, that's what we're getting from everybody. So there's also additional discounts that could be had if, depending if the board elected to pay for it in, 25% or 50 or 75 or 100% and just pay it off early. Right now, the current, the bid that's proposed for the rescue that they're talking about is $942,240.44. Again, if you sign a contract before September 15th, that would lock in that price. And let's see. I don't know.
But if we pay early,
But if we paid early,
we'll save
Yeah, I'll save an additional, it would bring the cost down. You have a potential savings of $224,000, 975, so just under $250,000. I mean, that's pretty, so that's why this is being presented to you kind of outside of the capital improvement. If you were to wait, the cost is only going to go up. So there is potential for almost $225,000 in savings.
All right, so a special meeting was held on August 24th, 2022 by the Emergency Services Council, which had voted to go ahead with this request, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so technically, your price will be $942,000 with no payment due until the time of acceptance and delivery, or if you paid early, you would get a savings of $27,482, if I'm reading this right.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And this is on the list for next year on our CIP, right? Correct? So.
Yeah, been on the list for several years. I mean, it's scheduled in.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Any questions, board?
So how much is in the CIP next year
For public safety,
for this engine?
800?
A little less.
A little less than
761,000? Okay. So it's more?
yes.
Okay. Did they consider a commercial chassis?
I don't know the answer to that. Chief Malot's here if you have questions.
No, I mean, I'm going to support this, obviously. I just want to make sure that the same difficult questions are asked.
I'm here to answer them.
I know you are. I move the board appropriate the $914,758.43 from the unobligated general fund for the purchase of the Sutphen heavy-duty rescue pumper as proposed, making the full prepayment within 30 days of signing the contract.
Motion on,
I'm sorry, Ms. Tucker, did you have anything?
I'm glad I didn't, but no.
Okay.
all right. There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question.
Yes.
We've heard several arguments made about why we should move quicker than we had planned to because of inflation, and they have, to a point, every single one of them, been very good arguments. Is this something that is likely to become, I don't want to say a habit, but anyway, is this something that's likely to continue? And maybe my question should go to Ms. Wilkes.
A lot of this is vehicle related, and once they get these component units caught back up, I think you'll see it come back down, and we won't put a rush on asking you to make decisions this quickly. I really don't think so. I think we're just in a time of about another probably 9 to 12 months of this until they get the component. They've started requiring companies to make the component units, so I think they're going to get there.
Okay.
It's kind of the supply and demand, and hopefully we're going to catch up.
Well, inflation plays a part of that as well. I mean, thank you.
Yeah, I think I can see that starting to settle a little bit too with the gas prices, and the housing market is starting, I think we're right at that edge where it's going to kind of start slowing down a little bit.
But yeah, housing prices have got crazy.
Yeah, we won't go there.
Yep. All right. Well, appreciate it, Ms. Wilkes. Next, we have County Administrator's Report. Mr. Rogers, we have the dual enrollment program.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. At the board's planning workshop, when we discussed education, there a question came up. This is simply an answer to that question. The question was, because the board really doesn't have a lot of say with regard to K through 12 education, yet one of its goals is to pursue academic excellence. What can the board do? The proposed suggestion was, could we help fund more students going to CVCC? You have in your package a description of the 4 basic programs that are available to students at our high school that are headed toward CVCC. And each one of those is, for the most part, already funded already built into the school division's budget and programs, and except for one, the early college program is paid for by students and their parents. So, if the board wanted to devote funding toward assisting students at CVCC, they could set a dollar amount, give that dollar amount to the Central Virginia Community College Foundation with the rules, the parameters that they would want enforced for that money to be expended for Amherst County students. So that's the only way to really directly assist students is through the early college program. The Governor's School and STEM Academy, the problem there is, all schools participate in that academy at the Governor's School, and therefore each school has a limited number of slots. And we have 6 slots, and we can't really get any more slots. And so the funding for those 6 students is already worked into the school's budget. The next one is dual enrollment college credit, where students get to take college courses while they're still in high school. And this is amount, so when a student signs up for a class, the high school pays for those credit hours. And the county could, of course, devote funding toward that, but the schools, as I said, already have the money built into their budget. So what you would be purchasing would simply be additional credit hours that could be available, but as it was explained to me, they don't need any additional credit hours. They've got enough funding for all the students that want to use the program, and throwing more money into the program won't necessarily encourage more students to come use it. The last one is the CTE Academy, and so all the high schools are participating, or school divisions are participating in the CTE Academy that's been set up through the community college, and that too, the schools pay into that to purchase hours for the students in the program, and they have sufficient funding for all the students that want to participate. So if you want to directly assist CVCC students, the way to do that would be to make direct donations to the CVCC Foundation with rules on how the money should be applied. And so I'm not asking for any action, I'm simply answering the question that you all presented.
Do we know how Beacon, I believe it's Beacon of Hope, for Lynchburg students? If you're a student in a Lynchburg school, you basically get 2 years of CVCC for free. Do we know how they fund that?
Yes, sir, we do. In fact, I submitted a proposal to the board 2 years before Beacon of Hope started on how we would do that. And for the most part, it's done with its own little foundation. It's done with donations, in their case from businesses. And back then, it was calculated that when a student comes into the program, they agree to sign up for all the FAFSA funding that they can get. And when they receive that FAFSA funding, it goes into the foundation. So in addition to their contribution, plus the contribution from local businesses, in Lynchburg's case, Lynchburg businesses that pay into that, they only have to come up with about $1,100 a year for each student. The rest is covered by FAFSA. And so that's how it is possible for those students that are interested in going to CVCC. There is sufficient funding for that. Giles County and Western Virginia Community College use a similar program. Giles County runs a mud race every year, raises about $100,000, and they use that money. And all the kids who want to in Giles County get 2 years of community college for free. In return for that, they are expected to give 40 hours of or maybe it's 80 hours of community service. 40 of those are actually donated during the mud race. They're the staff that runs the mud race that raises their own funding. And then additional hours are generally served in local government. I can show you a business plan for us to do that in this county because it's on the shelf, but that's how they do it. So it's part donation, part contribution.
I'm not sure what how my other board members think about that, but I think it'd be well worth revisiting that.
Absolutely. I liked it the first time I heard it.
I'll
Well,
be
that
hap-
was before my time.
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to send you the business plan. And now, it's a few years old now, the costs would have to be updated, but
And even if we had to provide seed money for it, I think it'd be worth looking at.
the seed money that was requested at the time was $100,000.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to see that.
Okay, I'll send that out.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rogers. Next, we have board, committee, commissions, Central Virginia Community College Board vacancy.
Yes, sir. As you know, we've been trying hard to find somebody to fill the empty seat of Mr. Walker, who can no longer serve. He served his 2 consecutive terms. And we have 2 people that have come forward that have expressed their interest. One was Nicole Arami, who you have already interviewed, and the other one is our own Stacy McBride, now who's willing to serve. I've confirmed with the CVC president and the existing board chair that a county employee can serve in that capacity. So those are the 2 names before you.
All right, board, I know Ms. McBride, of course, we all know her pretty well. We know her credentials and what she brings to the table. I don't think there's no need to interview her since we all intimately know her.
I don't know, I'd love to interview Ms. McBride.
But I would,
I think that's outstanding that she wants to do it.
yeah.
Sure. Yep.
So I would be fine with Ms. McBride serving on that board. Is there-
I'm all for it.
all right, well,
There you go.
all right, well, it looks like we got a consensus. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we appoint Stacy McBride as the Central Virginia Community College Board representative for Amherst County. Motion on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Congratulations, Ms. McBride. I'm sure you've got a little more to do now.
And thank you.
Yeah, thank you for wanting to
Absolutely,
serve.
thank you.
So, and then next, we just got some information regarding the quarterly update on the commissions and various boards that will come before us in the future.
Yes, sir. Can I
Oh,
have the
Mr.
floor?
Rogers, yes,
I got
certainly.
a few, I want to start doing something a little bit different, and that is to provide you all an oral update on a variety of topics that are going on. Some of them, I just get information as early as today, just to keep the board informed. The first thing is with regard to the landfill and the transfer station. At a recent meeting, we presented the history of the landfill and the transfer station, how we got where we are. I was directed to keep investigating whether it would be cheaper to open another landfill cell or ship the trash. And we have to look closely at the cost of a new cell and hauling, and it needs to be evaluated. So I want the board to know that we are evaluating the cost of opening a new cell. Our engineers estimate that cost at $2.7 million. The cost of diesel fuel remains high, although it has dropped below $5 a gallon. It's now about $4.75. And so I just wanted you to be aware that we are now going to crunch the numbers and look to see whether it makes sense to open the landfill cell and not begin hauling trash because of the cost of fuel. Now, to make matters even a little more complicated, we began today the process of uncovering the backside of cell number 1, uncapping it to allow us to continue to use the airspace above it. So in effect, lengthen the life of it that we started some months ago. Well, it turns out that the cap was supposed to be 2 feet of clay and 2 feet of soil on top of that, which would give us an additional 4 feet of space to fill and then match up the existing landfill cell number 1. Turns out that there is 12 feet of cover. I can show you the pictures. But that means there is even additional space on the backside of that landfill. That will cause that landfill to be open for at least another 2 to 4 years. So the life of the existing landfill is longer than we thought. And so we will still continue to study the cost of hauling versus the cost of burying, and we'll bring that information to you. Yes, ma'am.
How are we so far off?
The numbers that we were given were from the last engineering firm that we used, that we've since let go for this and other reasons. Their inaccuracies have been troublesome. And so they did their calculations based upon 4 feet of cover. They were our firm at the time we did the cover and certified the cover. So why it's 12 feet and not 4 feet is hard to understand.
So there's an additional 12 feet, which equates to what, an additional 2 years?
Well, it's additional 8 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, additional 8 feet.
So additional,
2 to 4 years
4
of
years.
life.
and then how much land is available for other cells there?
We have land for 2 additional cells. So cell number 2 was our borrow pit. So it is for the most part dug. It is not as deep as we wanted it to go because we've dug down to bedrock, and so it is what it is. And then we built the transfer station on top of cell 3, and then on the other side of cell 3 is empty land that would be used for cell 4.
So there's quite a few years of
Potential.
capacity.
Yes, sir, there is.
Okay.
There is. And with the cost of fuel, I mean, all of our calculations before were done when the cost of fuel was half of what it is now.
Sure.
So in essence, with the transfer station, we now have the flexibility to dispose of our trash in several different ways that would allow us to always pursue the cheapest cost.
So when you come back to us, I mean, I remember that, was it also a matter that the county wanted to get out from underneath the regulatory compliance associated with landfills?
Oh, the regulatory compliance, the hauling of leachate, the risk of groundwater contamination, yeah, all of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, another topic is the recreation and tourism plan. At our planning workshop, you indicated that you would like us to hire a consultant to do the recreation and tourism plan.
Well, I think I said a Parks and Rec plan as well.
A Parks and Rec plan, I'm sorry. That plan is what, we will put the request for funding for that in the supplemental budget, which won't take effect until next July. So I just wanted the board to know that we're going to continue on with the plan that we're developing and get that to you as soon as we have it ready. Then I think if you don't like it, you don't think it's comprehensive enough, we can revisit that. Because once the plan is done, we'll go out to the public, we'll seek more input, and we'll try to flesh it out as best we can. But I just wanted you to know that we're going to continue with that, even though you requested that we go with a consultant.
How much does such a consultant cost?
I imagine that's going to depend on how much work we ask them to do in the statement of work. I mean, we hired a consultant to do the Madison Heights Master Plan, and that's cost $200,000. So they'll put a lot of effort into it, but we'll define how much effort we want and what needs doing, I think, at the time you see what we can do for ourselves.
Okay.
I wanted to update you on Lynchburg Road. Lynchburg Road is the road that runs in front of the train depot. All the paperwork is now finally in place, but VDOT informs me that they will begin construction in May of '23. So this coming spring is when they'll start construction. They'll not start it this summer. We have out at the transfer station, out at the landfill, we have a maintenance barn, a vehicle maintenance barn. We have a mechanic that's taking care of all of our hydraulic equipment out there, our heavy equipment. But we have asked that Public Works also begin testing its ability to do the minor maintenance and upkeep of our vehicles. So starting in January, we're going to start running a test of the 35 county vehicles associated around this building and administration staff to begin changing their oils and tires and batteries and so forth, and do that on our own. And we'll see what kind of, whether that'll have an impact on manpower and resources, and whether it would make sense to continue to do that versus pay Jiffy Lube and other local businesses to do that work, which we can do ourselves. It might make sense for us even to hire a high school kid, to change oil and batteries and such for us. So we're going to start that in January. I'll give you an update on the Central Virginia Training Center. We were informed a couple weeks ago that we should expect the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services to declare that property excess as early as this week. And they will make that notification to the Department of General Services. We've already been in touch with General Services. They have already completed their ground survey of the property. They have already completed their survey of outside agencies to see whether there's any interest in that property. There is none. And they will then send a notice to us. I think they're also still waiting on a brownfields determination by DEQ and one other determination, which Department of Historical Resources. They'll send the property to them and ask for whatever restrictions or conditions that they want placed on the property. After they get that information back, they will then notify Amherst County that the property is available to us. If we have a plan in place, which we do, what we want to do about it. I can tell you, I've been informing DGS and the Alliance that our intention is to take that 180 days and use that 180 days for marketing, but we will probably not desire to take control of the property. It's more than we can handle to demolish, refurb, market, find a use for 98 derelict buildings. So we will probably not do that, but we will take our full 180 days to do it, so as to give the Alliance time to market. The Alliance does have several developers that are interested already.
Mr. Chairman, where are we on the mitigation of asbestos or the sewers or the water lines? That was always a big deal when we first started this process. So where are we now?
It's assumed, ma'am, that the lines in the ground will be abandoned with the buildings. The Service Authority obtained funding from DBHDS in the amount of about $250,000 and laid a water line directly down to the trailer park so that they have a source of water. And does that answer your question? I think that.
Well, kind of, sort of. So is it kind of a sold as is?
Yeah, that's how it will be sold. The CVTC.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
I wanted you to know that the Public Safety Selection Panel will meet on the 9th of September to review the applications that have been received. Once they identify the applicants that they're interested in, those applicants will be asked to fill out a complete county application. It's a rather extensive form with a lot of detailed information. With that information, they'll then meet again and decide which ones they want to interview. And that date hasn't been set. The EMS Academy. Okay, so one of the objectives, or one of the issues that we've been trying to solve is how to increase the manpower that's available to us. Every community in the region has a shortage. They cannot fill all the positions that they have for EMS, for EMTs. And so the county administrators got together and brainstormed this and decided the piece of the puzzle that we would tackle would be the pipeline, the front end of it. We met with our medical director, we met with CVCC, we met with all the public safety directors of all the surrounding communities. And we learned that CVCC there's a lot of kids that go through the training programs and the training classes at CVCC. Now, they don't all want to be EMTs. You know, they'll head off into nursing, or they'll head off into dental, or anything. And there's a small number that want to be EMTs. And so I think this summer term, they had 30, 2 of which were interested in becoming EMTs. In the fall semester, they've got 48 signed up to go through their EMS training. And of those, their preliminary discussions with the students, there's about 20 that are interested in being EMTs. And so the issue really becomes one of recruiting. Our own EMS staff has told me that, you know, recruiting up front is the key, and that all the other public safety directors feel the same way. When they can talk to the kids in the classrooms, they tend to be able to recruit them. So the first step is a date has been set in September, I think it's the 12th or the 19th, is a recruiting day. So for the CVCC students, all of the public safety directors will be sending their best recruiters to their classes, be talking about their programs, inviting the kids to come on drive-alongs, and be offering them part-time jobs. So as students, they can get part-time employment, and while they're in training, the EMS training, and basically that gives us time to put them in an ambulance and get some practical experience while they learn in school, and at the same time give us a look-see on whether this is a person that we would want to keep or not. Now, they'll come out at that means they'll go through their semester as a part-time employee of the county. When they get to the end of their semester, if there's somebody that we want to hire, we will offer them full-time employment and then begin Firefighter 1 training. Now, each of the localities have their own Firefighter 1 that they do at different times and different ways. But what we're going to try to do is have those that want to become EMTs, you know, the others will head off into their various medical directions, but those that want to become EMTs and go to Firefighter 1, become full-time employees, we will, with CVCC managing the class, and the localities supplying the burn pits, the fire trucks, the equipment, run a Firefighter 1 course, and they'll also have to supply the trainers for that program. The localities are not precluded from running their own, but if we can combine together, we think we can run a bigger and better class. And it also turns out that CVCC, because of its resources, will be able to pay those trainers even more than they're currently being paid. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to build that cadre and do it that way. And then we'll just see whether that worked or not, whether that's going to pay off, whether we've got to run additional courses. We're hopeful that it'll serve well, doing it once a year. That's kind of how CVC has it set up. If they had to, they could run another class in the spring, and then we could do another Firefighter FF1 class in the fall. But we're learning as we go. We've got a lot of empty billets that we have to fill rather quickly, and if we can recruit the kids in, and so the model that we're actually following is that what the sheriff's deputies do. They get hired, they get paid while they go to the police academy, and then once they come on active duty, they get a bump in pay, and then they serve their duty commitment. And these will have the same with us. So that's where we stand right now. So we're all head. I don't need any additional funding. All this part-time pay is basically funded out of the empty positions right now that are funded, but there's no one to pay the money, and so we don't need any additional resources. So we're really just going to try to recruit and build this program from within with the resources we already have. So, the public safety directors are very excited about it, medical director's excited about it, CVCC is excited about it. We all think it'll work. So we're looking for the holes at this point, the holes we gotta plug.
So I think everything that you said about the, paying them part-time, all that was great up until this regional fire academy. That concerns me a little bit because none of the volunteer side has been spoken to about it. We run our academy on nights and weekends, so we don't know if the funding for this regional academy is being taken from the funding that's put there to run our local academy. I think it's going to be will put a strain on the selection of instructors that are available. Because if you've got someone that just wants to be a volunteer firefighter, they have other jobs, right? And they can't do it during the day. So if you run it during the day and then we don't offer a local academy, you're pretty much putting the volunteer service out of business, right? So, and I take exception to that. So before we make any decisions on regional fire academy, I would think we would talk to volunteer fire chiefs about it.
I agree.
And I know that as we move forward, we're talking about, the engines as we replace them, they're ended up co-titled and this and that, but then you're taking engines out of service to go out to a regional fire academy, which happens, but all that needs to be talked with the volunteer agencies. So you can't have conversations in a vacuum. It's got to be open communication, and that hadn't occurred yet. So I would not make any decisions on that until you talk to the volunteer fire chiefs.
Well, there's no question that we've got to find a way to train people on weekends and evenings. At this point, we're just trying to get, this is, just to keep it in perspective, this is sourcing EMTs.
Yeah, so,
Our EMTs have to have firefighter 1 training, all right? We're not talking about closing down the pipeline for our volunteers at all, but keeping, and the idea was, as I understand it, is to do that firefighter 1 class straight on through, to get these EMTs through their firefighter 1 training as quickly as possible, run the courses during the day like it's part of their job.
well, my question is, why couldn't we look at, the most imperative part that the EMTs are going to be doing is riding the ambulance, taking care of people, right?
That's right.
So firefighter 1, why are you putting that stimulation on all of them at that point in time? It seems to me that that'd be something they could get as they go along, because their primary job will be taking care of people as they respond to the homes and accidents and so forth. And I would think that would be the priority, to get those people trained in that area. And I think the Regional Fire Academy, or like Emerson Nelson team together from time to time to do fire academies, usually on the weekends and the nights. And we don't need to shut that down, because a lot of people have no interest in being an EMT. Their interest is to volunteer to the community to fight fires. So we cannot shut that part of it down. And I agree with Mr. Martin that if anything happens, it needs to be run by the volunteer.
Well, the issue that drives it, Mr. Pugh, is the fact that because we don't have enough EMTs, they're not on a 40-hour per week schedule. They're on a 58-hour per week schedule. And in order to do that under state law, they've got to be trained as firefighters. We consider them firefighters and EMTs. That's how you build the hours into the schedule that allows us to work with so few people. So they've got to be both EMT trained and firefighter trained, so we can put them in our EMS system.
That's right.
So that's why we want to get them through fire.
I still agree with Mr.
No one
Martin.
disagrees with
So,
that. That's,
Well,
of course, that's a priority.
Well.
But I'm just trying to solve the EMS problem, and
Well, good, let's solve the EMS problem first, right? And what we've done in the past is we've sent the career staff through the local academy. And I'm fine if we want to research going to a regional academy. I would just appreciate it if the volunteer side had been part of the conversation before you went to it. Because nowhere on this board have I heard at any time that we're interested in going away from the volunteer fire department.
No, absolutely not, and that's not what I heard.
But if you do a regional academy during the day, and it takes the instructors away from the county academy, and they're not willing to come teach two academies at once, you're not going to have a county academy for the volunteers, because the volunteers cannot go during the day, right? And then you won't have a local academy. So conversation is key, how to work all that out. So all I'm saying is I would have appreciated if the volunteer fire chiefs had been a part of the conversation before we went off and started making these decisions. Okay? Very clear.
Okay.
So.
I just got a question. For an EMT, do they have to get certified or get licensed, whatever? Is it 1 semester, is it 2 semesters, what is it?
It's 1 semester,
It's 16 weeks.
and it's easy. I went through it one time. I took the class, and then you've got a test out at the end and pass your test. You know, where you go and you assess the patient, do all of that. It's not that bad of a course.
Can I get an answer from one of these guys?
It's 16 weeks.
Is it,
Summertime is 7 to 8 weeks, the semester is 16 weeks long. There is no practical test now, the instructor validates it, and there's software.
and then at the end of that, you're an EMT, and you can get hired by the county as an EMT, right?
We have to be careful of their hours, though.
Okay. That was
So
my question.
that's why we want them.
And just following up on what Mr. Martin said, absolutely, I mean, everybody here supports the volunteers. I think we got a history of that. I guess it's communication. I didn't hear a either or, I heard a yes and. So that was just, I think, but,
Devil's in the details.
Yeah, there's been no suggestion that the firefighter one schools all
Well-
be run simultaneously.
and Mr.
They'll have
Martin,
to
you are
be
much
worked out
more
with shared
engaged in that
resources.
community than I am, but absolutely
Well, I
support
guess
volunteers.
my point is we have people on the volunteer side that have been expecting a fall academy, and when I go to get the instructors, they're like, oh, no, you're not doing a fall academy, we're doing a regional academy, and CVCC is going to run it. It's like, well, that's news to me.
Well, as I said, there's been no change to the volunteer system and the volunteer academy that they need to run. And there's been no ask of them. The CVCC might even provide the instructors for the EMS FF1 class because it'll be done quickly, straightforward during the day. They can hire that person. The two issues don't necessarily even meet. I mean, we're not necessarily drawing on the volunteer resources. And if we are, we do it in a shared fashion with whoever's got somebody available to assist. I mean, it's as Ms. Tucker said, it's not an either or. It's not we have to do this or we have to do that. We can do both. We can do both. And those instructors that want to work for CVCC can make a whole lot more money than they are making right now as instructors. I know you're an instructor, that's important to you, and it's going to make things better for everybody, and it doesn't diminish the volunteers or their status or our need to maintain the volunteers. And I would hope all the board members are encouraging all the volunteers with that information, that they are not at risk, they have never been at risk, and they won't be at risk. We cannot afford to operate a fire system without the volunteers. And if they're not hearing that every day or all the time from you all, then they develop their own fears and their own rumors that are not correct.
Which is why communication is key from the beginning. So let's just open up that line of communication.
Yes, sir.
Anything else, Mr. Rogers?
That's it.
All right, I wanted to go back to, so right now, you're saying the Public Works, they have enough time on their hands to go out and begin maintenance on all the county vehicles without additional resources or employment?
No, sir, I'm not saying that. In fact, they're saying that they don't, but I want them to look at whether it's, I mean, if we've got to take something down to a local garage or Jiffy Lube to change the oil that takes 10 minutes and pay somebody $20, $40 to do that, it might be easier if they can schedule it between jobs at the transfer station maintenance shop, that they do it there. So they're going to look at that. It's an experiment. They don't claim to have any extra hours, but I've asked them to do that. I'm just letting you all know that we're trying to maximize the use of our resources.
All right, I just know that they're busy there with their other jobs, and as well as doing some of these maintenance items for the Parks and Recreation. It just doesn't seem like they have a lot of time.
Well, we're talking about their mechanic.
How many mechanics do they have?
One.
Wow.
All right. So, let's see here. Now we have County Attorney's Report. Do you have anything for us, Mr. Lockerbie?
No, I just thinking of Mr. Wade and Mr. Ayers, hope they're doing well.
Same here, same here. All right, liaison and committee reports, pretty much, I believe, for information, unless there's anything you need to share. Regarding the Planning Commission, there's a couple rezonings that will be coming our way regarding the Terry Morcom property. Also, it's several rezonings for that property regarding an assisted living facility and apartments. There's some tourist rentals and short-term rentals that will be coming our way as well. I'm sure our next meeting will have quite a few public hearings to go through, so be prepared for that. As always, the Planning Commission keeps doing a great job. Jeremy Bryant and his staff, I'd like to commend them, and that's all I have regarding the Planning Commission. Anything on the other items? The Lynchburg, okay, just for information?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, next we have the departmental reports to CPMT. Jennifer Blodgett, or Jet? Blodgett.
My name's Jennifer Blodgett. I am the probation supervisor with the Amherst Court Service Unit. We handle juvenile probation, domestic intake, juvenile intake for criminal petitions, but I'm here today in my capacity as the FY23 CPMT chair. The CPMT is made up of several different agencies, representative from DSS, Community Service Board, Juvenile Probation, and the schools. And our job is to help at-risk children in the community with the services they need to be successful. Children's Services Act, partly state-funded, partly county-funded, to help children in DSS custody, those in foster care, those that need residential placement that cannot be served in the community, students with educational disabilities that either need private school day placements or special accommodations to meet their IEPs, and children in need of services, which is our court service unit handles those. Parents, GALs, different can petition the court and say that their child is in need of services. We were able to take those cases before the family assessment and planning team that basically comes up with a plan. They meet with the family, meet with the child, come up with a plan of services that may benefit the child. That then comes to the community policy and management team, CPMT, for the funding of those services. We always try to use the least restrictive, in-home, try to keep these kids in the home, getting services to function better as a family. Of course, with the pandemic the past couple years, we have seen a significant increase in children with mental health issues, children who are struggling in school. Stability of family has been a problem for a lot of the families in our community. So trying to serve them and keep them as whole as we possibly can has been our goal for the past couple of years. I have Joni Tables here with me today. She is the County Children's Services Act Coordinator. She coordinates all the CPMT meetings and also the FAP meetings. So she has some figures for the last year that she can present.
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah, if you want to, I don't know, did you cover the match rate at all on that? Okay. So part of, get your little paper? We've got some arrows there. A lot of what people don't understand about CSA world is because it's the Code of Virginia, it is some sufficient. So the kids that are mandated and meet eligibility requirements, we have to pay for those services for those kids. So it gets a little costly. especially when we're looking at our special education day students. This year, we had some of our school rates increase to almost $485 a day, I think, for our kids that have autism, and we're getting more and more kids that are having higher levels of childhood trauma, autism, behavior issues, and the intellectual disabilities. So we're getting, when I first started here in like 2014, I think we had 3 or 4 that were at that autism rate. I would guess about half of my kids are about that rate right now. So we're spending a lot of money to educate our kids in those day placements. But the part that you guys are actually probably always getting requests from Stacy for is the local match. So the state, when we say some sufficient, the state reimburses our locality depending on each service that we employ for the kids. Each service has a different match rate attached to it. The real goal is to keep the community-based services. That match rate is about 13 to 14%. When we're putting our kids in residential placements or out-of-home placements, foster care, those types of things are right around 30, 35%, can be very costly. So we work really hard in our locality, keeping our kids local and making sure that we're using every community-based service that we can for the kids so that it's cheaper for our locality, and it's, in the long run, it's so much better for our kids and our families.
And trying to keep these kids, intervene early before they get into the court system, before they come into foster care, doing a lot of foster care prevention work, putting services to try to preserve the families as much as we can.
So I did give you, I pulled from our dashboard, and I apologize, it's not very clear. It's the way the state dashboard prints. But there is a comparison, and it starts at fiscal year 2018, going to fiscal year 22. Our fiscal year 22 doesn't close till the end of September, and we've got 2 more months of uploads. So that column, right now, it says we're showing 83 families through the CSA system. I'm thinking it's probably going to be around 90. We have seen a little bit of a kind of a stagnant and decline because of COVID. We did not have as many eyes on our kids in the school to make CPS reports and to get all the services for all the kids that we would have hoped, because they were all at home and we weren't really seeing everything that was going on. But if you want to look down that, you'll see that obviously our expenditures continue to go up. I'm guessing we're going to end this year around 2.4 million. And probably next year, with the increase in these special education rates, I'm guessing we'll be at 2.5 million in our actual expenditures. To go to the next page, I just pulled some stuff just by placement type, and if you can see the little tiny part down there, it's the residential. That's the part we've worked really hard on the last few years, is to really not place kids in residential unless we absolutely, unless the community is unsafe or the child is really a danger to themselves. So you can see our special education, that's where a lot of our money is. And then on the back is just demographics, in case you're interested of what we look like. Our racial demographic is pretty similar to what the county is. Our boys and girls are about half and half. It's mostly teenagers. One thing that I am proud about in Amherst County is our referral sources. Many of the counties in the region for CSA primarily only serve DSS kids. Here in our county, we have a really good system of partnerships. We work really good together, really hard to make sure that we're not duplicating services and that we're really taking holistic looks at families. So we're about 30% court services, well, not court services, CSB, our Horizon referrals, our school, and our DSS, but then we also get a lot from the courts. So I'm really proud that we're using a system of care that is working the way that it should work. Our biggest challenge really is the prevention. The kids that are some sufficient, they're in a pretty bad shape by the time we get them. They're and their families are pretty much in crisis. We don't have a lot of money for prevention, and that's really, really where we probably need to start looking at. It's the only thing that's going to really make a difference. Our strategic plan a couple of years ago, we started a trauma-informed community network. We were one of the first in the state, number 9 in the state. And so our strategic plan is really about educating parents, employees, and our workers especially that work with kids on the impacts of trauma, childhood trauma, and really start getting people to look at how we're working with kids and families and how that could look different and why we could be more preventive. So we have some good plans and some things that we're working on in that area. Any questions?
Any questions for him? I have no question. I would say thank you for coming here today and giving us an overview of what you all do. I think it's an eye-opening for us. I sit on the Department of Social Services, so I'm fairly familiar with most of this, but I know it's a hard job, and sometimes it's a sad job too at the same time when it's heartbreaking, but somebody has to do it, and I appreciate you all doing it.
Thank you, thank you.
And Jennifer, I think we went to high school together. I didn't recognize her until she got up here, but it was Jennifer Newman back in those days.
yeah.
I haven't seen her in a long time, but anyway, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and that's the last item on the agenda. Next, we have citizen comment. Anyone wishing to speak under citizen comment? Mr. Sam Bryant?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Pugh, fellow board members, history repeats itself, and I just want to talk about the FLSA decision you made. I didn't speak about it in the beginning because I don't want to influence your decision. I respect you as elected officials, and I appreciate your service. I want to remind you that Department of Labor was in public safety in Amherst County in 2012, and if you've decided to go through this, but basically the law is crystal clear, and you have Mr. Lockaby who will defend you, but the law is crystal clear, and we're willfully violating the law, which means we can have the penalty of liquidated damages, which are very expensive. I'm coming to you first as a constituent, an active life member of the Amherst Life Saving First Aid Crew, and also a taxpayer. And I know we've got a pretty good tax hike coming next year from what I hear, what I read, and what I believe. I don't want to waste the county's money. I just say you can get past this by just paying the people. If the volunteer fire companies need to help that much, pay them the overtime to help them, because that's how you can get out of this. So take that into consideration. If these young men and women that want to volunteer their time off to be part of the fire departments, pay them the overtime. Take care of it up front, then you don't have a beef. You don't have the Department of Labor in here. Think about that, consider it. We have open billets. We've worked real hard for an EMS academy that we were hoping to be able to present to you before it was asked about, but hopefully that will go forward at some point. And I wish you the best. I'm out there. I always want the best for Amherst County, no matter what that means. But also want to do my very best to keep you out of trouble. Although it's only one voice, it means a lot to me to see Amherst County prosper and move forward and everyone work well together. You can have the biggest crash in the world and everyone comes together on the scene and they take care of it. They need to be able to do the same thing in this room and on the street and in meetings as well. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sam.
Mr. Bryant. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close citizen comments. Matters from members of the board. Ms. Tucker?
I don't have anything, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Martin?
I would like to say a big thank you to Amherst County Sheriff's Office, especially Amanda, for helping to get the horse issue taken care of out on 29. They were able to get all those horses moved out to a horse rescue, so I appreciate them doing that.
All right, I have one thing. It actually probably is one of your constituents, Mr. Martin, but I had a concern on Boxwood Farm Road near the convenience center. The lady was telling me that pulling out of that, however you're supposed to exit, people are flying by that. She almost got hit the other day. I don't know if we could put a sign up or just take a look at that and see if we're doing everything we can to make it safe there. I don't know if we've had any reported crashes or not, but it was just a concern she brought to me, and I figured I would bring it to you.
Yeah, sight distance to the right is difficult when you're pulling out of that. I don't know if you can have VDOT take a look at that.
And that's all I have.
Got it. Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, next, we'll go ahead and go to closed session. I'll make a motion. We go into closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A6, a discussion or consideration of the investment of public funds where bargaining is involved which if made public would adversely affect the financial interest of the county. There's a motion on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
board committee. Yeah, that's right. Or at least close enough.
All right, I have a motion. I move the board commit $30,000 to the County Fair Committee to obligate for entertainment at the 2023 County Fair. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, board, I make a motion, we adjourn.
So,
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.